let's move on to the next presentation, Named Entity Recognition for the domain of EU legislation. And joining us to talk about that is Dominik Skotarczak, IT Service Officer, Publications Office of the European Union. Proszę.
Dziękuję bardzo. Thanks for the introduction. My name is Dominik. Hello, everyone. This morning, we'll be talking about NERDLE, which stands for Named Entity Recognition for the domain of EU legislation. And this presentation is focusing on the crafting of this modular hybrid framework for information extraction. And the work I'll be presenting is not only my own. I am co-authoring this with my fellow colleagues, Jakub, Guillaume, and Xavier. But let's just get to it. So first, I would like to give you an overview of what named entity recognition actually is. And it is the task of identifying and classifying named mentions of entities in unstructured text. Now, we can also focus on named entities in the legal domain specifically, and those could be organizations, references to legislation, geopolitical entities, temporal, numerical expressions, events, identifiers, products, and other artifacts. And so with that, we finally arrive at NERDLE, which is a text processing component developed at the Publications Office to recognize named entities in legal texts in the EU Acquis and later in case law. It is a combination of knowledge-based machine learning and generative AI techniques. It is also a benchmark corpus of EU Acquis documents. And it will also serve the evaluation of different NERDLE techniques ranging from lexica to generative AI-based extraction. So we're really across the technological span of the available technologies for the task. And for you to understand the context a little bit, NERDLE is being developed within the Acquis Management Program that is led by the Publications Office in collaboration with Secretariat General of the EC, as well as DG Digit. It aims to build a comprehensive digital ecosystem to support the management of the EU legal acquis and also to provide complete, updated, and granular information for better search and analysis of the EU acquis. It will ultimately simplify compliance for member states, businesses, and SMEs. And along the way, it aims to use AI-driven information extraction. But before we get to AI, let's have a look at NERDLE's taxonomy. Now you can see that there are main types of entities that we are detecting, and there are plenty of subtypes within those subtypes. But NERDLE taxonomy is designed to accommodate the evolution of the EU acquis and the business needs that come with it. Now, moving on to the technology, we have opted for the incremental hybrid approach that consists of the lexica, which are great for certain types of organizations that don't really vary across the text, such as the European External Action Service. Now, for some more complex entities, patterns are a better approach. And here you have an example of deadline that can be detected. And then for some other more complex entities that require some statistical information, we would like to include machine learning. And here you have an example of a legal reference to the 1971 Fund Convention. But the question of which entities are best detected with machine learning is still somewhat unclear. And so we now finally arrive to generative AI, which we reason is good for entities that require some contextual information. And here you have an example of it. It's the competent gov.com authorities, which is a national organization. But here, the same thing goes for generative AI, as we saw with machine learning. We don't know which entities would be most suitable for it. Now, NERDLE has already been used. You can see that NERDLE has been put in action for the extraction of reporting requirements. You have a very brief overview of what's in it. You can see that the entity types are more generic. There's also a relation highlighted here. And in doing so, NERDLE used lexica that had been compiled from various sources. You have an example of a geopolitical entity that we all know, France, and different forms that it can appear in the text, in multilingual text. Now, as for NERDLE's patterns, I won't go over the code, but please note that we are reusing the Express pattern engine that actually had been exploited in the Europe Media Monitor. Now, if we want to use classical machine learning for NERDLE, we need the right tools and we need the right data. In other words, corpora. And so really it's about combining the right frameworks, the right modeling approaches with the right data. The available data out there is mainly concerned with financial entities, some medical entities, historical, and some of them are just scraped off of the internet. What we really want is corpora that include legal entities and more specifically entities in EU legislation. As most of the corpora that we have seen out there are concerned with case law. Now, with classical machine learning, we have some areas of potential. So we can increase the performance if we choose the right modeling approach, and we can do it at a relatively low computational cost. But there is also a risk point. If we don't have enough training data for EU Acquis, the quality of those extractions won't be satisfactory. And for that, we need the right corpora. The corpora give us the potential to evaluate specifically on EU Acquis, but there, as I just mentioned, there's a certain scarcity of these legal NER corpora. Moving on to generative AI, we have seen in our work that generative AI can offer a potential recall boost, but it can also come at the cost of potentially lower precision. And we have also seen that standardization and normalization can bring some quality loss, not to mention the computational overhead with large language models, which is considerable. And so that's why generative AI requires engineering for robustness and optimal performance. And what do I mean by engineering? So most of you have interacted with large language models in chats online, but if we actually want to extract information, we need to pre-process it. By that I mean chunking it in the most appropriate way, design the prompt, design the tools that we are working with while prompting the LLM. And here again, there's a risk of performance improvement, the potential of performance improvement, but there's also the risk of losing quality. And finally, once we process that with LLMs, we need to link it back to the original text. We need to mark where those entities are in the text. And the risk here is that we actually lose them by incorrectly linking them back to the text that it came from, if the offsets are wrong. And so you might be asking yourself, what is the benchmark corpus for? The short answer is to cover for those areas of potential and also try to mitigate the risks that appear. The more nuanced response to this question is that we need an agreement between humans on the task for the machine to be able to correctly identify those entities. And we also want to evaluate NERDLE, its components, and other named entity recognition tools. We also want to quantify the possible adverse effects in the industrial setting of information extraction from EU Acquis. And here we want to understand which technologies work best for specific types of entities and understand which entities, for example, do not get detected and need to be worked around. We also want to train and instruct models, and for that we need data. But a really important point here is that we would like to facilitate the structuring of the business needs on the task of named entity recognition for the legal domain, and also tune the taxonomy accordingly, the taxonomy that you saw earlier in this presentation. And then finally, with the benchmark corpus, we hope to better position the publications office in the domain of legal natural language processing. So about the corpus creation, we are looking at 40 documents from EU Acquis. They are they're in English actually, and to annotate this data, we are using Inception, which is a web app, and we also have developed the NERDLE codebook for onboarding annotators, and it really serves as the Bible of NERDLE. And so with those two components, there are 2 annotators assigned per document, and once they annotate their documents, this document is then passed to a curator that not only assures that they agree, but also that they adhere to the codebook. And we estimate that we will have about 35,000 entity mentions annotated and curated to ultimately cover for those areas of potential and those risk points. And here you can see some of the corpus statistics. You can see that organizations, legal references, and locations are the most frequent entity types in the 25 documents that we have annotated. We already have over 18,000 entities annotated and curated, and you can see the length of the document is pretty large on average, 77,000 characters. It takes time, and actually our colleagues from Digit B2 have had a taste of this work, but it's an important one. Now, there are mainly non-nominal mentions of entities, but some of them are nominal, and it's a considerable amount. Nominal mentions are like mentions of operators, producers that don't really pin to a specific organization or a specific entity that we can name. There are also some nested entities, and I think it's best to show you this slide to explain what nested entities are. Here you can see a legal reference to EU legislation, and within that reference we have a mention of the Commission and also a mention of a deadline. So they're nested inside those legal references. That's something that I've observed myself while annotating my documents. And so about our framework. The codebook serves as the entry point for new business needs. It helps us adjust the taxonomy as necessary. That then the codebook is used for creating data. And we are currently at 25 documents. We want to have 15 more. Once we have enough data, we can then extend the tools that we have, currently lexica and patterns, to classical machine learning and generative AI. And with that, we move on to the evaluation phase where we test, see what works best for what types of entities, what doesn't get extracted correctly. We can also see if there are some entities missing, and we look back to the codebook. And none of this work would have been possible without the annotators. So a huge thank you to the annotators. I know that some of you are watching this presentation, and it's a valuable work, and thank you for that. Yes, that was it from my side. I'll take some of the questions that you all have.
Okay, Dominik, dziękuję bardzo, and thank you to that whole team. It's quite impressive. Let's give them a big hand to start with, yeah. I have a number of questions, and to remind everyone that it's very hard to get to all of them, but these questions that are unanswered, they do go to the speakers, so they eventually do see them. And the presentations are visible on the event page. Program page, after they're presented. So anyway, here's one. Is NERDLE's taxonomy, from the Slidos, is NERDLE's taxonomy based on an existing ontology vocabulary, or was it custom made?
It's actually a mix. We have looked at the available research on legal named entity recognition, but that was predominantly designed for case law. We have also looked at the statistics of the entire EU Acquis to come up with the entities that are frequent, that are important to cover. And we also have experience working on previous tasks, so we adjusted that taxonomy for it as well. So yeah, it's custom made.
Okay. Next question. Is there a, in parentheses, dovetailing cooperation with the Ref2 Link project that was presented yesterday?
No, not explicitly. We have some overlaps, except we actually span across different types of entities, not only legal references. And another difference is that we don't link, at least at this point, we're not linking to other legislation, which I believe Ref2 Link does.
Okay. And how many documents do you plan to annotate? 25/40 seem not so much, and with these you already have got almost 20,000 entities.
Yeah, so yeah, we plan to go up to 40 documents. They are selected thematically so that they cover different types of topics and different areas that are in the EU Acquis. But the idea is that once we have those annotated, we can actually use technology, well, not only evaluate how technology works, but then we can start using the technology to annotate the rest. So that's the idea. We start with 40 and then we go up with the technology.
Any questions by microphone? Anyone? Well, one that comes to mind for me is because I do work in the Parliament, you know, for communications, for journalism and so forth, and I see how legislation evolves very quickly when they're in negotiation, there are hearings and so forth, and they have to be updated, and you're going to the plenary, and you have to have things on time. How much is all of this helping to facilitate that and speed it now that we're getting off trees and now we're digital?
Well, if you look at the Acquis and the statistics, you will see that a lot of the entities that are actually mentioned there, they are repeated over time. That's European Commission, European Parliament, and so on. So that the proportions don't change much, and those rare entities, because they appear as the legislation evolve, they are actually covered by generative AI. So that's where it's really precision engineering here, where we use the generative AI when something new appears in the Acquis. But if it's an entity of a certain type, it's already covered. So if it's, let's say, a new organization that is mentioned in the legislation, it is covered under organization commercial, for example, which is a part of the taxonomy. If the taxonomy needs to be adjusted, then we create a new field. But the taxonomy is designed to evolve over time. It's a solid foundation. Yeah, it will evolve with the Acquis.
Yep, go ahead.
Thank you very much for your work. I'm wondering if you are capable also. Yeah, I'm wondering if you are capable also to manage.
University of Bologna.
University of Bologna, Monica Palmira.
Voilà.
Thank you. I'm wondering if you are capable to detect also acronyms of the agency, because sometimes you have acronyms, and also the connection of the evolution of the name of organization, especially the agency of the European Commission over the time. So many agencies are mentioned in the legislation like acronyms, and also the acronyms and the name change, but are the same agency at the end. Thank you.
Yeah, and those acronyms change too over time, yeah.
Well, so that's something that we're also trying to see with this corpus, to answer these questions. Are we confident enough that we can cover for those acronyms? It's a really good question, and I'll keep that in mind to have this covered as well. But yeah, ultimately it will come once we get to the evaluation part.
Okay, yes, please.
So in Edgar Schouten, Elsevier, in addition to that question, I would like to know if mergers and spin-offs of organizations splitting into two organizations or two organizations joining each other, becoming one organization, if that's tracked also, so that you have a heritage of former organizations.
So NERDLE aims at really marking them in the text, but later on what happens with it, how it's combined, for example, how mergers are reflected, it's the task that will come after that, and it's currently not in the scope. But why not? It possibly could be extended to it.